Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl as we continue our look at the laws of magic in Warhammer The Old World, and now we're on Elementalism. So let's see how this law compares to the others. So first up is the signature spell. This time it's a hex. It's a casting value of 7, so a nice, easy to cast signature spell. Range of 12 though, so quite low for a hex, which means you're targeting an enemy unit. So you've got to be within 12 inches of the enemy at the beginning of your turn, i.e. before you get to move. That's not that easy. So until your next start of turn subphase, the target enemy unit suffers a -1 modifier to its movement and initiative to a minimum of 1. If this is cast, the effects of any other hex on the target immediately expire. Okay. I'm not a massive fan of this. A -1 to movement is okay. -1 to initiative is okay. You know, if once charged, if you're in a continuing round of combat where no one is charged, that could make a difference. But -1, is that going to make that much of a difference on a unit that's charging? Maybe in some very specific cases. But the fact you have to be within 12 inches of that enemy unit at the beginning of your turn before you move means your wizard is either massively threatened in the back line or he is right up on the front line. Which, you know, do you really want that to be the case? Now, if he's right up on the front line, you know, we look at some of the other spells we've seen, you know, toughness modifiers, strength modifiers, that sort of thing. A -1 to movement initiative just doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, by and large, to have your wizard within 12 inches of the enemy. So as a signature spell, I don't think it's that great. I really like the demonology and dark magic ones, I have to say. Yeah, let's move on. Right, so first up of the normal ones for Elementalism then is Flaming Sword. This is the assailment spell, has a casting value of 8, and of course it is cast in combat. So what does it do? So the unit the cast is engaged with suffers d6 + 1, so an average of 4. Strength 3 hits with no AP hits are flaming. Okay. 4 strength 3 hits on average with no AP. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's that amazing. I wouldn't be rushing to get my caster into the front line to cast this spell to do amazing damage. It seems almost like an emergency. My caster's in the back line being caught. I need to do something, and I'll see if I can chip some damage. It feels, again, quite underwhelming in terms of its damage. You know, it doesn't have anything going for it apart from it being flaming. You know, and how often is flaming going to really make a big difference? Again, niche cases. So as with that first one, this seems like very niche, and overall, the overall impact on average, quite underwhelming. Again, to particularly having your wizard either so close or in this case in combat to be able to get this spell off. So yeah, not a massive fan of this one either. Right, Plague of Rust. This is a hex spell, casting value of 9 and range 21 inches. This is more like it. So you're targeting an enemy unit, so it's a hex. It means you have to have done it in the strategy phase before you move, so having that 21-inch range makes it a lot more flexible. So until your next start of turn subphase, so it lasts this turn and the enemy's turn, the enemy unit suffers -2 modifier to its armor value. And it may target enemy units already engaged in combat. This is a good spell. This is a good spell. You know, this takes a unit that has heavy armor only to have no armor save. This takes a unit with heavy armor and shields to save on 6s. That is absolutely massive in terms of the impact that could have on a combat. you really impact those heavily armored units. You know, a lot of the value of heavy cavalry, for example, is in their armor save. You know, humans and elves and so on barded war horses and with their heavy armor and shields or full plate and so on. You know, their value and their points value is in that armor, and this has a chance to really, you know, -2 is enough to make a difference. And it was my issue with the first spell that had just the -1 felt a bit lackluster. -2 actually feels like it's got an impact, and I think this is great with its range, mid value of casting, and the fact it's a -2, the fact you can cast it on a enemy unit in combat. This is the best spell we've seen so far in Elementalism, without a doubt. Right, summon Elemental Spirit. We're back to our magical vortexes. All right, then. Let's have a look at this one. Casting value of 9, range 15 inches. Remains in play. Place the 3-inch round template with centre within 15 inches of the caster. The template is treated as dangerous terrain, and no line of sight can cross it. So you can block line of sight, but it's only 3 inches of blocking. Okay. It moves d6 inches in a random direction at the start of turn, so it could move in a direction that blocks your line of sight, not the enemy's. Any enemy unit template touches or moves over suffers d3 plus 3 strength 4 hits, each with an AP of -1. So 4 strength 4 hits. So you got the strength there, which is a strength 4, which we want. We've got some AP on there, which is nice. 4 hits, not too bad, and the fact it's d3 plus 3 could even be averaging 5 hits. The damage is pretty reasonable. The downside is the random movement. I mean, it is your magical vortex, so you could move it. The fact it can block line of sight is quite nice. Of the magical vortexes that you don't have control of its movement, this one has value. It could do some interesting things. Is it going to block an entire unit of archers that are in a long line? No. But is it going to reduce the number of shots they get? Yes, because you can block their line of sight. You could, particularly if there's terrain on the board, putting it next to a piece of terrain extends the blocking line of sight of that piece of terrain, for example, by another 3 inches. And the fact that, an enemy is not going to want to go near it with the potential damage it can do. It's not going to destroy enemy units by any stretch, but at least the first time you cast it, you're going to do, 4 or 5 strength 4 hits onto an enemy unit, which is potentially a reasonable amount of casualties. So, not a bad spell. Not a bad spell. It's the fact you add the dangerous terrain line of sight to the damage that makes it, I think, have some reasonable value. So not bad compared to some of the other spells in Elementalism. This is definitely one of the ones I like at the upper end. Right, Earth and Ramparts. So an enchantment cast in the strategy phase, casting value of 10, so it's on the most, or not the most, but the more difficult end, range of 15 inches, which is less of an issue targeting a friendly unit. So until your next start of turn subphase, which is nice, the unit gains a 5+ ward save and counts as being defended by a low linear obstacle. However, while the spell is in play, the target unit cannot march or charge. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're not giving this to a unit that's just about to charge an enemy. You're giving this to a unit that's just about to be charged, which in off times when you want to boost the survivability of a unit, it's generally not. It's not a charging unit you want to boost survivability. I want to boost the damage output of a charging unit, right? Because then I don't want the attacks back. So actually, this is doing the right thing in my mind. I think the negatives of not being able to march or charge, I don't think matters at all. A 5+ ward save is a good ward save, and the fact that you count as being as well. Behind a defended low linear obstacle, if you get charged, is nice. So, I mean, this is really a good spell if you're about to get charged by cavalry or any unit, in fact. 15-inch range, pretty nice range. The downside is the casting value, so this really wants to be on a high-level wizard. But a pretty good survivability spell. Definitely has value. The negatives in my mind aren't negatives, so not bad at all. Okay, Wind Blast. Okay, this is the Elementalism magic missile. And I like magic missiles because of their flexibility and general fact that they can be used in a lot of turns. Now, the first thing I noticed with this magic missile is it has the lowest range we've seen so far from a magic missile. So the effect-wise, the target enemy unit suffers D3 plus 3 strength 5 hits, AP -1. Once the hits have been resolved, the unit must give ground. Okay, so the effect definitely seems to make up for the lackluster range. Doesn't have a high casting value in comparison. So you could maybe get away with this on a lower level wizard, push him further to the front, just behind a unit, but not in a unit. I mean, 4 or 5, strength 5 hits, that's really good. I mean, that's good strength, that's a good number of hits. AP -1, so you're not going to be, you're not going to be doing this against heavy cavalry and getting good things with it, but doing this against, reasonable units of infantry with light armor and shields, or just heavy armor or something like that. The fact that the unit must give a bit of ground as well is pretty nice. So actually, when I first saw it and I was looking at the range, going 15 inches on a magic missile, but what it does is pretty good. So not bad, but again, probably something that you'd want on, for me, I'm looking at a lot of armies and I'm thinking, I want a level 4 wizard, I want a level 2 wizard. This is the kind of thing I probably want on my level 2 wizard, and I want to push him further forward, closer to the action, closer to combat, and have my level 4 wizard behind, not too far behind, because you still want to be in range to do dispels and all that sort of thing, but trying to keep him out of combat and do the buffs, the debuffs, and that sort of stuff, and where you want some of those more difficult spells to be more reliably cast. But yeah, this one not bad at all. Okay, the last one for Elementalism is Travel a Mystical Pathway. It's a conveyance spell. It has a casting value of 10. So we're on the upper end of casting values and a range of 9. So a high casting value and a low range. Needs to be pretty good effect. So if the target friendly unit is not fleeing and has not already moved during the movement phase, you may immediately remove it from the battlefield and place it anywhere within 12 inches of its original position, but not within 6 inches of enemy models. The target unit cannot move again this movement phase. So you're not going to pick it up and put it behind an enemy unit and charge. But you could pick it up and put it on the flank of an enemy unit or the rear of an enemy unit and just threaten it. So the enemy unit, you could then sandwich it between 2 of your units, for example. I mean, also you can essentially lift it. You could have a unit of heavy cavalry, and you could teleport that unit of heavy cavalry over the front of the enemy line. They're going to have to survive 1 turn, so they're not going to be out of charge range. So it is risky. Yeah, you can't move far enough with it. You're not going to be jumping the enemy line with this and expecting to get away with it. If you jump the enemy line, they're going to turn around and smash you from behind, and then probably reform, because they're going to hit you in the rear, reform, and get you that way. But I mean, it's going to give you some flexibility of movement. That's a good thing. It is difficult to cast. It does have a low range. 9 inches means that you know, your wizard's probably going to maybe be able to reach 1 or 2 units, unless you're in a blob. But in most cases, he's going to be able to reach 1 or 2 units. So you're not going to have a lot of choice about what units you do this to. And it's got a high casting value, so it needs to be a higher level wizard, really, that has this spell to be reliable. The fact you can't move again afterwards, I think, is important. But moving 12 inches from its original position, like I say, you can do some interesting things with, but I don't see it as like a game changer. You know, like I say, you're not going to be hopping the enemy line, getting into war machines, archers, that sort of thing, without, you're going to have to survive an entire enemy turn of that before you'll be able to charge. So it seems to be more about either putting units out on the flank or pulling them back out of harm's way. Could be another thing that you could do with it. But if you're pulling them back out of harm's way, given that you're only 9 inches away from that unit, your wizard is now in harm's way of whatever was threatening that unit. So it's okay. I think the biggest thing for me is the actual range of what I can cast it to. High casting value, look, this could be quite powerful, right? Because you're lifting a whole unit off the battlefield, you're basically teleporting it. 12 inches is a reasonable distance. But the fact that it can only target a friendly unit within 9 is what really lets it down for me. So I'm not a massive fan. And, you know, and it seems to be, I've said this about a few spells in Elementalism. Overall, so far, and this is just gut feeling from the spells we've looked at so far and the different laws, you know, battle magic, demonology, dark magic. Elementalism seems my least favourite so far. It's the one that on paper, and let's face it, this is all what's on paper. I'm not saying it doesn't, some of the spells don't have value and you can't do things with them, but overall it's the one that, gut feel wise, I go, it's not really a spell lore that I'd want to, you know, go down unless I've got a very specific reason to do so. So there we go. And that brings us to the end of the Elementalism lore of magic. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. In the comments down below, let me know what you think of this lore of magic, or if you have intentions on using it, and on what sort of things you might want to do with it. As always, if you want to see more content, hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do. It means a lot for me, so thank you for that in advance. Thank you to all the people that have already subscribed and are returning viewers. You've been watching The Ghost Owl, and I'll see you all very, very soon.